All right, everyone, welcome back. Thank you so much I heard so many good conversations as you were discussing this chapter. I know this chapter is a little bit different than the other lessons. So just so that you're aware, this is the overview. So you've gotten through the tough work. Moving forward in the next coming weeks, each session will be fairly similar in that it's going to be going through different questions and application questions, and you're going to be doing some heart work. I wanted to encourage you, though, on a few things. Number one, Cheryl sent out a document on First John that is in a Word document. I encourage you to utilize that for things like word counts. You can do quick Command F, find, to search how many times it says love or practice or whatever. I also encourage you to use that because they're hyperlinked. So you'll notice that the little letters, the little cross-referenced, are hyperlinked. So if you open that up on a computer, you can just click on the hyperlink and do cross-references faster. So I know some of you love to just kind of flip back and forth, and that's fine, but some of you are a little bit more strapped for time. So I wanted to give you some ideas on how to possibly do that a little bit quicker. What you're going to look for, though, in cross-referencing is Old Testament verses. And remember, you can cross-reference the New Testament, but they didn't have the New Testament, right? So if we're looking up context and wanting to really understand what the author was thinking, it wasn't like he had James's writing to go back to, because that wasn't the case. I mean, John might have, because he was the oldest apostle. But that's something to remember, is try to look for Old Testament. You can look up a few here and there of the New Testament, but just a little word of advice there. Also, when you're looking up Blue Letter Bible words, how many of you have gotten used to that? Have you actually looked up words in Blue Letter Bible before? If you're like, I don't know what to do and this is so frustrating, please stay after and I'll show you real quick how to do it. I do encourage those of you who love books to just buy a Strong's Concordance and just flip through and find things. It's a big, heavy book, but if you love books and you want that in your library, I encourage you to do so. If you don't, use the Blue Letter Bible online, not the app. The app will take more learning than the online version, but that's okay. What I'm going to tell you real quick is we have what's called cup studies coming up, and some of you are familiar with our cup studies. It basically is a way for us to remember how to study the Bible on your own. This is one of the things that we've been training you for the past year and a half in how to. So if you're new to this group, it's just how do we even study this? It's kind of a lot and a little bit frustrating sometimes. So we use the term cup. It's basically context, universal application, and personal application to help you just get your mind around, how would I even start in a passage? We do word studies because it's simple. It's more simple than you might think. And once you start doing them and seeing the value of them, you're going to be excited about them. How many of you dug into doing word studies and are now understanding the value? Any of you? A couple of you. A couple hands raised. Good. Try them. So we're going to encourage the table leaders to start with the cup next week. So don't miss that one. So the cup study is the passage study at the end of your homework for this week. Start there. Get it done, because that's the thing we're going to start with. Okay. And I know that might seem daunting to you, but doing just a little bit more hard work when you're studying the Bible can be extremely rewarding. So for you busy moms, if that's the only thing you can do, really do that. You'll be highly rewarded for it. It will be an amazing thing for you. And if you have any questions throughout the week, please text me and then set a time that we can talk, and I'm happy to talk you through that. So if you're confused or don't know how to do it, but what you want to always do is start with the verse in question. So rather than going up and looking up a Strong's word, look at the context of why you're reading it, because our language today means something very different in many cases. So hopefully that helps you guys out. I want to ask, though, so we're going to get into our teaching segment here. How many of you have pets? I think a lot of us do. Are any of you non-pet owners? Some of you are like, I have pets. But you have all of your beautiful bugs in the backyard. Butterflies. She's like, that's true. Okay, Pastor Rick this weekend talked about dogs not being able to dance to music. Do any of you have dogs that actually can? I think it's interesting, right? There are some that I think do know, like reggae. There's some that are calmed down by music, but they don't typically know beats, right? They don't know emotion somewhat. I promise you, my dog has this crazy smile sometimes when we haven't seen him for a long. It's really odd, and you're like, there's a full-on emotion in that dog. So animals do have some emotions, but can I reason with my dog? I mean, I can say anything to him in any tone of voice, and he just does this. It's like he's trying to understand me, but he doesn't get the words that are coming out of my mouth. And I can say anything to him in a sweet voice, like, oh, you are so ugly and you're such a bad dog. And he's like, yay, mommy loves me. So, and I learned this early on because I have one child. And those of you who know people with one child, we tend to not, I never talked baby talk to my son, ever. He grew up with adult language. So when the dog got introduced to our world when my son was 10, the dog hated me. I'm using strong language here, ladies, because he did not like me at all. One of my very good friends said, Jen, do you talk baby talk to him? And I'm like, no. Why would I do that? Baby talk is so lame. Like I was that mom. She said, do it for me. Just try it. When you wake up tomorrow morning, go get your dog and say, hiya, puppy. How is the puppy doing today? Like, and I'm like, you're crazy. This is not how I talk. So I'm like, I'm going to try it because this dog hates me and I kind of don't like him either. So the next morning I woke up and I went in and got him from my son's room to feed him. And I did it. I'm like, oh, who's a little Dash? You're so sweet. And I did it like so ridiculous. He lit up. That dog now loves me. So to say dogs don't have emotion, I don't know about that. But he gets that the verbiage, right? So the dog thing, though, is a straw man argument. And what I mean by that is if I can say anything to him in any tone of voice, and he will believe me based on my tone of voice. I can say something so loving in an angry tone of voice, and he will think mom's mad. It's an interesting thing because I can speak authoritatively to anyone in here about a topic. I think I told you at one point when I was in college, it was so funny to me because I could get people to eat their fortune cookie notes. So we would sit down, everybody got fortunes. I said, well, if you really want it to happen, if you want the fortune in the fortune cookie to come true, the only way for it to actually come true, and I said this straight-faced, is you crumple it up and you eat it. You have to consume it. It must become part of your person. And I said this with such authority that everyone at the table without question would be like eating this piece of paper, and I'm dying inside thinking, dummies, you know what I mean? But authority and how you speak can make a difference. Okay, how many of you are moms in here? When you got pregnant for the first time, did you go to your brother to ask what you should do, or your dad, or a man? No. Did you even go to a friend who's never had a child? Who did we go to when we're pregnant for the first time? My Lamaze. And your Lamaze coach hopefully has had a child. You know what I mean? That's the interesting thing. I always think it's so fascinating to me when people teach something that they don't do, like the financial advisor who's like completely broke. It's always odd to me. But you go to someone who has experience, right? Who's done it. Here's the thing when I think about eyewitness versus hearsay, I want to always look to the person who has either experienced it firsthand or is an eyewitness person, right? They know what's going on. It's not just hearsay. It's not just a assumptive advice. I can't stand assumptive advice. It just like, blah, you don't even know what you're talking about. I work in an industry, I'm a healthcare practitioner in the holistic world, and it kills me how much weird stuff is in that field. Just weird stuff that you're like, really? That is so odd. So I base like my practice on real stuff, but like hardcore holistic healing. but I'm really looking at what works and what doesn't from practice, from people who have eyewitnessed. You've experienced it. Does this work or not? Not assumptive advice. So when I think about these secret things, and I think about John, so let's talk about who John was real quick. John was the last living apostle of his time. So the last living apostle, person who spent time, he was in the inner circle with Jesus, and he was like the original hardcore elder. If you think about that, I always think about John as, because he was a son of thunder, right? Him and his brother were just go get him. So I imagine one of those old men who just are big guy, super smart, super with it, but almost like tatted up. You know what I mean? Like you see he's lived a hard life, but he's wise. So I think of John as that, because you can see his sanctification, right, in his life, because this letter is just filled with wisdom. So when I think about the secret things, though, and I think about what John was up against, he's this old guy who just knows the truth. He lived the truth. He lived with the truth. You know what I mean? Eyewitness right there. Jesus, he laid on him at one point. You know, it's like all these things. The one who Jesus loved, right? So how does John then fight against what was going on in the world then? He was fighting against Gnosticism. So if we understand what like this whole concept of Gnosticism is, the secret things. So what does that look like for us today? Like Harry Potter, Star Wars. How many of you are Star Wars fans or Harry Potter fans? I mean, you know, it's like, it's fun. The Force would be like Gnostic today. The Force. That is a secret knowledge that was spoken with such authority, so it's believable. Now, we know that's fake, but just to kind of give you an example of what that would look like in today's world. And when I think about what John was up against and the biblical context where he kept going back and going back and going back to doctrinal truths, that's what I want you to remember is we are filled with a world of people saying, I know the truth and I have the secret, and this esoteric sense of authority where people are speaking to us with authority about things that are twisted. So how do we love God in a twisted world? How many of you over the summer are like, God, where were you this summer? I feel like, you know, this happens a lot to women. It happens to me where I think, man, I just feel like God is distant sometimes during the summer. Does anyone ever feel that way? Like where you get into the summer and the routine is off and you feel like something's off. Well, God is never changing. God is not off. Who's off? We are, exactly. And I'm off because I'm not abiding in him. And that's the simple answer. The truth of what it is, what does it look like for each one of us when we feel distance, when I feel, man, I'm struggling right now. God, where are you? It's not God not wanting to lean into me. He's already leaned into me, sisters. He leans into you. It's that I'm not leaning into him. And so I'm going to encourage you this semester, because this is tough work. I'm going to tell you, of all the studies we've done, this is going to be the hardest. There's going to be some like heartstrings and some difficult conversations at the tables. But do the work. Lean into God. Abide in him. Meditate today on what that looks like. What does it look like to abide in him? You know what it means. It's read his word. If you don't have time to read his word, listen to it. I mean, I'm on Marco Polo with a lot of my mom friends because it's the only time the kids are strapped in and they can actually like have a somewhat conversation with another adult. Take some time off Marco Polo or off other things and let your kids listen to music and put some one earbud in and listen to the word of God. It will bless you beyond anything. Pray when you can. That's what pray without ceasing is, constantly, Lord, what do I do with this? You got to practice this. This is John helping us. We got to practice these things because we need to abide in him. So I encourage you as my sisters. I love you all. I want to be there for you. I am your advocate as well. So if you need a prayer, If you need prayer immediately, you can text me. I've texted most of you. If you've not gotten a text from me, text me today if you can. My cell phone number is in your email addresses. We're going to end with singing a song today, and we're going to just start with the Amazing Grace, which I believe is on page 3 in your songbooks. But again, if you have any questions, I am here for you afterwards. And just remember, abide in him. Okay? So I'm going to pray, and then we are going to sing our song, and that'll be good. Lord, thank you so much for just who you are, that you never change, that you are always with us, and that, Lord, that we might really be aware of the fact that it's important that I lean into you, that we all lean into you, that we put on the things that we need from you, that we trust in your holiness and in your righteousness and not our own, that we would seek you daily, that we would love you and honor you, that we would put aside our flesh, put aside our own hopes and desires and dreams, and know that you have us, that if you care for even the little birds in the air, that you care for us so much more. And God, I just am in awe. I am in awe of the fact that you, the God and maker of this entire universe, even see me. What an honor that you love me and that I am called your child. It's in your name we pray. Amen.